Welcome back to the Homestyle MMA podcast. This is Sean Van Buren here for episode 4, and we have a great one in store for you today. Please go follow at the Homestyle MMA podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and at Homestyle MMA Pod on Twitter. The podcast website is hosted on Podbean. You can type in the HomestyleMMAPodcast.podbean.com for additional information and a listing of all of the available locations to find the podcast. Today we'll be previewing the UFC Fight Night Ortega vs. Rodriguez fight card. This main event has heavy featherweight title contention implications as both men are very high-ranked UFC featherweights. The winner may find themselves fighting Volkanovski for the featherweight strap next, if it is not Josh Emmett. With Volkanovski's broken hand that he got in his last title defense against Max Holloway, he'll need to be out about 12 weeks, and I could see the UFC potentially putting the winner of this main event against Josh Emmett to decide who fights Volkanovski next. That way he can take his time, not feeling rushed back in from his injury. I do also think that a finish in tonight's main event card could put the winner straight into a title fight with Volkanovski if he's able to do it in dominant fashion. The prelims are going to start at 11 a.m. with the main card following at 2 p.m. Eastern Time on July 16th, 2022. The main card will also be aired on ABC. Usually when they set up an ABC card, they're doing so because they're hoping for fireworks and to attract new fans to the sport, and hopefully that is what will come out of this one. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into the prelims. Prelims start us off with Jessica Penne versus Emily Ducote. Jessica is 3 inches taller with the same in reach advantage. She's currently on a 2-fight win streak as she faces the former Invicta FC champion Emily Ducote in her UFC debut. She is doing her UFC debut on a pretty big card, and hopefully her experience in Invicta will help keep her nerves under control. Ducote is on a 3-fight win streak against some decent competition in Invicta. Jessica Penne has 8 submission finishes, and I think she'll want this fight on the ground. Emily has some experience in Bellator, and she even fought for a championship with them. She's coming off 2 TKO victories, so I am going with 28-year-old Emily Ducote here in her UFC debut against 39-year-old Jessica Penne. The next prelim fight is Dwight Grant versus Dustin Stoltzfus. These guys are similar in size and reach. Dwight Grant is coming off a 2-fight skid, and he is 2-3 in his last 5 fights. He is susceptible to the takedown, and Stoltzfus averages 1.7 takedowns per fight. Stoltzfus is on a 3-fight skid and is still looking for his first win in the UFC after earning a spot on the roster in Dana White's Contender Series. In both of his last 2 fights against Gerald Meerschaert and Rodolfo Vieira, Stoltzfus was winning both of those fights in the striking category. He had Gerald Meerschaert beat on the scorecards if he could survive the final half of round 3, but Gerald caught a submission as he can do with his exceptional jiu-jitsu skills. Stoltzfus still has to get a win to stay on the UFC roster, and I think the underdog Dustin Stoltzfus rights the ship here against Dwight Grant and possibly gets the submission win himself. Next up on the prelims is Dustin Jacoby versus Da-Un Jung. Dustin Jacoby has yet to lose in his 7 fights in the UFC, counting his Dana White Contender Series appearance. He is a high-volume fighter who can wear down his opponents as the fight goes on. Da-Un Jung has a 2.5-inch reach advantage and has also not lost in his 5 fights in the UFC. So both of these guys combined are 12-0 in the UFC. This is a great fight for the prelims. Da-Un Jung has 13 finishes in his 15 wins, with 11 of those by knockout. So he has some strong knockout power, but he also has the ability to wrestle and take you down and finish you on the ground. He can knock you out on the feet, knock you out on the ground. It doesn't matter to him, and coming off a dominant victory over William Knight and a knockout win over Kennedy Zekchukwu, who we just saw got a win last week. So Da-Un Jung has a lot of momentum on his side. I think he makes a statement win here early in the fight by finish, so we will be riding with the coin toss underdog Da-Un Jung. Our next prelim fight is Bill Algeo versus Herbert Burns, brother to Gilbert Burns. Bill is 2-2 in the UFC with every fight going to decision. He doesn't mind initiating wrestling since he is a good jiu-jitsu fighter, but he's susceptible to being taken down as well, and that is going to be a problem against Herbert Burns, who averages 4.6 takedowns per fight. Burns is a guy who does like to wrestle. Bill Algeo is going to have to stop those takedowns, or Herbert Burns will start to beat him on the scorecards as he gets him to the ground, lands some shots, gets some control time, makes him work back to his feet, and takes him back down to the ground. Algio should try to use his height advantage to land some strikes from the outside. With 8 of his 11 wins coming by submission, I think Burns will lead the fight with takedowns and is able to grind out a victory here. Algio is willing to play the jiu-jitsu game in the octagon as well, so I would look into taking Bill Algio by decision if you think he will win, or Burns by finish if you think that he will win for longer odds. Right now we're going with Herbert Burns here as another hungry dog. I think he's the better jiu-jitsu fighter. I think Bill is willing to play that game with Herbert Burns on the ground, and it could prove to be a poor decision. The following prelim fight I think is excellent matchmaking, and I'm surprised that this fight isn't at least headlighting the prelims or would even be on the main card. We have Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore. Ricky Simone, the number 11 ranked bantamweight, is taking on number 14 ranked Jack Shore, who is an undefeated fighter. The winner will likely be in the top 10 next week and will be due for another big matchup. Ricky is on a 5-fight win streak. Jack Shore is undefeated as a pro, and in the UFC specifically, he's 5-0. He has a 2-inch reach and 2-inch height advantage. I think that this is the best fight on the prelims, and it should be a coin toss in my opinion. I think that the odds should be a little bit closer, as Ricky Simone is very skilled and is a very well-rounded fighter. With this one, honestly, I'm just hoping for a 3-round war between these two excellent fighters that both have a lot of upside potential in the UFC. This could be a fight of the night performance or performance of the night if one of these guys can get the finish, because they are both so skilled. A finish would be very impressive for either one of these fighters. Both of these guys are extremely well-rounded MMA fighters. They have pieced up opponents on the feet. They've wrestled opponents with incredible pressure for 3 full rounds. Because they are so even, in my opinion, I think whoever can impose their will in the wrestling will win the fight. I think wrestling will be the difference. These guys have incredible cardio. I don't think either one will slow down. And I think Jack Shore will get it done by decision in an incredibly close fight. A 3-rounder that, like I said, has the potential to be a fight of the night. The last fight on our prelims is Punahele Soriano versus Dalcha Lungiambula. Soriano has the 3-inch height advantage, but Dalcha has the 3.5-inch reach advantage. Punahele Soriano is coming off of a 2-fight skid where he lost a split decision against Nick Maximov in his last time out. Maximov took down Soriano a ton in that fight, rolled over 10 minutes. He would take him down, let him up, take him down, let him up, take him down, let him up. Really tried to wear out Soriano, and he kind of did so because it was relentless wrestling. Dalka, on the other hand, is on a 2-fight skid as well. He will wrestle and test Punahele Soriano to see if his takedown defense has improved. That's obviously the easiest path to victory, so hopefully Punahele Soriano has put some time into his takedown defense training. Soriano has won 7 of his 8 fights by finish. Dalka has a few submission losses and 1 knockout loss, so he has shown that he can be finished. I am taking Soriano to end his skid here and get a finish over Dalcha Lungiambula. Soriano never lost as a pro prior to his last 2 fights, and I think he's the hungrier fighter for a win right now. And I think he's going to try to get it done early, because if Dalcha is able to work his wrestling in well, I think the further this fight goes into 3 rounds, the more it will help Dalcha get the win and potentially wear down Punahele Soriano. That wraps up our prelim fights. Let's go ahead and dive into the main card fights. The main card starts off with a fight that was rescheduled to this date after Lauren Murphy was unable to make it into the cage in their first attempt at setting this fight up. Lauren Murphy is the number 3 ranked women's flyweight, and she is welcoming in number 10 ranked women's bantamweight Miesha Tate into the division as she drops down a weight class here. They're actually similar in size, and Lauren Murphy is coming off of her loss to Valentina Shevchenko in the women's flyweight championship by 4th round knockout. Lauren Murphy often uses her wrestling to get wins, and Miesha Tate will be a very tough challenge to wrestle. Shevchenko out-wrestled Murphy in her last fight, and I think Miesha will do the same to Murphy. Miesha's 1-1 since her UFC comeback began in 2021 after a 5-year layoff. Miesha lost a close fight against Ketlin Vieira back in November of 2021 at the women's bantamweight division. That was a very almost controversial judging. Ketlin Vieira did end up winning fairly substantially on some of the judges' scorecards, but I think a lot of the fight community actually saw it much closer, with some folks giving the win to Miesha Tate. I think as Miesha Tate drops down in weight class. I think it will be very advantageous for her as she is calling for a championship bout with Shevchenko if she can get the win on Saturday. So she's already trying to set up her next fight. She's got a lot of confidence heading into this fight with Lauren Murphy. I think she can get the win here and immediately put herself into title contention in the women's flyweight division. Our next main card fight is Shane Burgos versus Charles Jourdain. This is going to be a fantastic fight while it lasts. Number 14 ranked Shane Burgos has the 2-inch height advantage and 6.5-inch reach advantage. These guys want to strike, and that reach advantage could prove to be very advantageous for Shane Burgos. Charles Jourdain is going to need to work his way inside, or Shane Burgos will be able to use that 6.5-inch reach to pick him apart from distance. Shane is coming off of a great 3-round war against Billy Quarantillo back in November of 2021, where we saw Shane Burgos stuff 14 takedowns. Shane Burgos is not easy to get to the ground, but I think both men are going to want to stand on the feet anyways. Charles Jourdain is on a 2-fight win streak where he did have a quick guillotine submission win on Lando Venata back in April of this year, but he kind of caught that guillotine submission as he was being taken down. I don't think Shane Burgos is necessarily going to want to wrestle on this one, so I don't think that Charles Jourdain is going to catch a guillotine while he's getting taken down to the mat. Both men are very durable on the feet, and since I think this fight will stay standing, we should expect a fantastic 3-round war between these two fighters for another potential fight of the night. I'm going with Shane Burgos and his reach, and I hope that he continues to rise up the rankings in the division. The next main card fight is Matt Schnell versus Sumer Darji. These fighters are similar in size. The fight continues a common theme of this card, which is a great grappler or jiu-jitsu specialist with Matt Schnell versus a great striker with Sumer Darji. Number 8 ranked Matt Schnell was subbed by Brandon Royval in his last fight and has only one win in his last 4 bouts. Matt Schnell is 2-3 by knockout, which is very bad news when you are fighting Sumer Darji. Sumer Darji's 13 of his 16 wins have been by knockout, but he is 1-4 in submissions. So both of these fighters are excellent where they want the fight to take place, and they struggle when they can't get the fight where they want it to be. Sumer Darji wants to stay standing. He wants to fight on the feet. Schnell wants to get the fight to the ground. He wants to work his jiu-jitsu. If Sumer Darji keeps it standing, which is where every round starts, I think that he can get the knockout on Schnell. Sumer Darji is on a 3-fight win streak. He's ranked number 11 in flyweights, and I think he knows that Schnell needs to get him to the mat to win. Hopefully Sumer Darji has been training and game planning for that. I think he'll be ready for it and will keep the fight on the feet. I will take either Sumer Darji money line, but I do think he will likely get it by TKO or finish. I'll be taking a look at both of those. I think the fight will not go the distance regardless of which side you're on in this fight, because 33 of their total 41 fights have not gone the distance. As we continue to approach the main event fight, we have next in line Li Jiangliang versus Muslim Salikov. Number 14 ranked welterweight Li Jiangliang has a 1-inch height and 1.5-inch reach advantage. Jiangliang has lost 2 out of his last 3 fights, but all were against very good competition, including Khamzat Chimaev his last time out. Jiangliang struggles against wrestlers, but he does have power in his hands. He loves to stand and bang on the feet. Salikov also has power with 12 of his 18 wins by knockout. Neither fighter has been finished by knockout as a professional yet. Salikov uses his wrestling to land ground and pound, and he can also set up strikes on the feet. I think because Salikov is able to wrestle efficiently, I think he will be able to mix in his wrestling and striking in order to keep Jiangliang guessing. And I'm thinking that Salikov will get a few takedowns early that will have Jiangliang worried about them going all night long, as he maybe has big reactions to Salikov's takedown feints. I think he will start to land big strikes on the feet, as he does a good job mixing in the wrestling with the striking, and Salikov gets the win here. Our next main card fight is the karate hottie Michelle Waterson versus Amanda Lemos. Number 11 ranked strawweight Amanda Lemos has a 1-inch height advantage and a 3-inch reach advantage over number 10 ranked Michelle Waterson. Michelle Waterson has only won 2 of her last 5 fights, and each of the last 2 fights were 5-round wars against Angela Hill and Marina Rodriguez. She lost the Marina Rodriguez fight and won a split decision against Angela Hill, where she took heavy damage in both fights, and this is her first fight since May of 2021. Both fights were absolute wars, mostly on the feet, where the women just punched the crap out of each other. That's a lot of damage to take, so I am glad that she took some time off before returning to the octagon, gave her body a little bit of some rest to heal up. But Amanda Lemos is 5-1 in her last 6 bouts, with the loss coming by surprise submission in her last fight against Jessica Andrade. Andrade landed the impressive standing arm triangle early in the first round of that fight to finish this one. I think it caught everybody off guard, including Amanda Lemos, and I think she was disappointed in that performance on that night. Unfortunately for Michelle Waterson, I think she'll be taking out that frustration in this fight here. I do think this fight will be much closer than the odds because Lemos is susceptible to being controlled, and Waterson does not mind to wrestle, get you to the ground, work some control time, whether it is on the ground or against the cage. That will be Michelle's game plan in this one, but I think Amanda Lemos will get the win here, and she will continue to climb the rankings because I do think she is the better striking fighter, and I think she will do a good job of outstriking Michelle Waterson in this fight. That wraps up the main card fights outside of our main event, Ortega versus Rodriguez, and let's go ahead and take a look at that fight specifically. Man, are we in for a treat with this main event. We have number 2 ranked featherweight jiu-jitsu specialist Brian Ortega going up against number 3 ranked striking specialist Yair Rodriguez. These two fighters are both very elite fighters, and the winner could find themselves fighting the champion Alexander Volkanovski next. Josh Emmett believes that he has next in line right now, but with Volkanovski's broken hand from his last title defense against Max Holloway and needing 12 weeks to recover, we could see the winner of this fight go up against Josh Emmett, with that winner getting the title shot. I do think that Brian Ortega or Yair Rodriguez could leapfrog Josh Emmett if they're able to win this fight in a dominant fashion or by finish. We have a bit of a logjam in the featherweight division, even though Volkanovski is a very active champion. I think all of the Max Holloway rematches, while warranted, did kind of create a logjam with all the other fighters in the featherweight division. Yair Rodriguez has a 3-inch height advantage and 2 inches in reach, which will help him in this fight since he wants to keep this fight standing, and ideally Yair Rodriguez wants to fight this one from distance. Brian Ortega wants to get it to the mat so that he can use his jiu-jitsu, so Yair is going to want to keep some distance and have Brian Ortega take those grappling shots from as far away as possible so he has time to see them coming. Yair is going to stay on the outside, try to pick Ortega apart from a distance, and Ortega is going to be looking to get in close, get a takedown, and then get to work with his Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Ortega's last fight was a loss against champion Alexander Volkanovski, where he took a ton of damage, but he did have a chance twice in that fight to get a submission victory. He had very deep submissions in on Alexander Volkanovski, and he was able to escape both times and defend his belt with just pure grit and fighter determination. My concern for Ortega is that he got crushed on the feet by Volkanovski, and now he faces another striking dominant fighter. We're going to need to see how much has Ortega improved his striking since that loss in September of 2021. I would like to think that he's been working on that aspect of his game over the course of almost the last year, because we already know that he is an excellent jiu-jitsu fighter, so hopefully he's been working on the feet as much as he can. Yair Rodriguez is coming off of a loss against Max Holloway and a decision win against Jeremy Stephens before that. Stephens was able to take him down and control him for over 5 minutes in that fight, even though Yair Rodriguez got the win. I think Ortega would be even more dominant if he could get Yair on the ground compared to Jeremy Stephens. Max Holloway, a fantastic striker not known for his wrestling, was even able to take down Yair 3 times and control him for over 6 minutes in that loss in November of 2021. Max Holloway, again, an outstanding striker that the champ just beat recently, not known for his wrestling, was able to take down Yair Rodriguez, which is really not a good sign when you're going up against Brian Ortega, who once he gets you down one time is going to start throwing submissions at you like crazy. I think this is really a toss-up fight. just like last week, where it will depend on which fighter can get to their strength first, whether that be Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for Ortega or striking efficiently for Rodriguez and stuffing takedowns. I think that this is a big step up in competition for Yair as well, because he has not fought any of the top 6 ranked guys in the division right now. I think cardio for both fighters is great and won't come into play in this one, but I do think that Brian Ortega gets the win with takedowns, good control, he's able to hold his own on the feet, and maybe he even gives the first submission loss of his career to Yair Rodriguez in what should be an excellent main event fight. Now let's go ahead and take a look at our bets for UFC Fight Night Ortega vs. Rodriguez and what the Homestyle Perfect Plate Parlay will be composed of. Let's go ahead and dive into our UFC Fight Night Ortega vs. Rodriguez bets. I do use 2 different sports books, so I grabbed the best odds available to me at the time of recording. As always, please bet responsibly and within your means. If you think you have a problem, please call your state's hotline. We start with the Jessica Penne versus Emily Ducote. We took Emily Ducote moneyline minus 145. Dwight Grant versus Dustin Stoltzfus. We went with Stoltzfus moneyline plus 120. Dustin Jacoby versus Daun Jung. We went with Daun Jung moneyline plus 110. Bill Algeo versus Herbert Burns. Herbert Burns is actually coming out as an underdog. I got him at plus 158. I think that is a very live dog. You should definitely look for that wherever you are gambling. Ricky Simone versus Jack Shore. We went with Jack Shore moneyline minus 165. I didn't have it available to me just yet, but I think you could go by decision if you want the larger odds. Punahele Soriano versus Dalcha Lungiambula. Punahele Soriano moneyline minus 240. I think you could take this one by finish if you want that number boosted as well. We'll go ahead and go into the main card bets now here. We have Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate. We went with Miesha Tate moneyline minus 210. I think that could be a good one to take by decision as well. Shane Burgos versus Charles Jourdain. We went with Shane Burgos moneyline minus 165. Matt Schnell versus Sumadarji. Sumadarji moneyline minus 275. I think you could also go fight to not go the distance. That way, if the strength of one of these fighters overwhelms the other, you might be able to find that at better than minus 275. I didn't have it available to me just yet. Li Jiangliang versus Muslim Salikov. We went with Muslim Salikov moneyline minus 175. Michelle Watterson versus Amanda Lemos. Amanda Lemos moneyline minus 350. And we wrapped it up with the main event, Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. We went with Brian Ortega minus 165. So we did go chalk on the main card, but I also included some nice underdog bets to take in the prelims. That leads us into the Homestyle Perfect Plate Parlay. Today we are going to throw together Herbert Burns, Miesha Tate, and Amanda Lemos for plus 389. Again, we're getting a nice juice on that with Herbert Burns being an underdog, who I think can easily get his win, maybe even by submission. Go ahead and jump on those bets. I hope you have a great weekend. Good luck to all of us, and please gamble responsibly. Thank you for tuning in to episode 4 of the Homestyle MMA podcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope that I have put a little bit more excitement into this UFC Fight Night Ortega versus Rodriguez card for you. I do think it will be a great card top to bottom, and I do think that the winners of these fights are going to set themselves up for a big fight next. Throughout the card, there's a lot of people who are hungry on this card, who are looking for that next level of competition for their next fight. So I think guys are really going to bring it here. And as always, please bet responsibly. If you have a gambling problem, call your state's hotline. I will be posting my verdict scorecard predictions prior to the event on social media for the podcast. Please go follow at the Homestyle MMA Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and at Homestyle MMA Pod on Twitter. Check out the Homestyle MMA Podcast.podbean.com for additional information about the podcast. I will continue to grow content on social media as we get further into this podcasting journey. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please subscribe, like, and comment. Next week, we will recap this fight card with what we think is coming next for these featherweight contenders. Till next time, this was Sean Van Buren on the Homestyle MMA Podcast. Have a good one.